A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And joining us now is the host of More Money on WABC Radio on Saturday, Steve Moore. Steve, before we get into all the economic news, you have to hear this. Did you hear this? And this is big on economic news. Janet Yellen calling for $78 trillion.
Secretary of the Treasury?
Secretary of the Treasury, yep. $78 trillion, John, with a T, to tackle climate change. Of all times right now. Your reaction, Steve?
Yeah, you just can't make this stuff up, and I'm not making it up. But when she was out in Brazil for the...
We're losing you, Steve. We're losing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, she had advocated, Janet Yellen, our Treasury Secretary, $78 trillion. Trillion, not billion, not million, $1 trillion. $1 trillion is $1 million. So she wants to spend that all on saving the planet and climate change mitigation. But as I said in our article today, for $78 trillion, we could probably just colonize a new planet.
I mean, she's really Secretary of the Treasury and makes statements like that?
You know, John, it's interesting you should say that because, when Janet Yellen was first appointed 4 years ago to be the Treasury Secretary, I said, she's pretty good. I think she'll be okay. She had, she was the Fed chairman. She's a well-distinguished economist. But, my God, she has drunk the Kool-Aid of this climate change craziness. I mean, the $78 trillion of money. By the way, who do you think is going to get that money? $78 trillion. I want a piece of that action. But, these are the same people in the government who can't fix the potholes, can't secure the border, can't fight the crime in the cities, can't fix our schools, but they're going to lower the temperature of the planet with $78 trillion. It is so preposterous that it just makes you roll your eyes and wonder, what are these people drinking?
Steve, if we don't fix all the other problems we have in this country and the world, there won't be any planet to save for the climate issues.
That's a great point. I mean, look, with 1/100th of what they're talking about spending, we could fix our schools. We could find cures to every major disease, cancer, heart disease, multiple sclerosis. We could end hunger in the U.S. and the world. We could end poverty. And they want to spend all this money. And this is just going to go to these green groups. And I've always said this. The green movement isn't about fixing the environment, Rita. It's about money. This is just a swindle.
I'm talking more about security. I mean, we need to be spending these trillions of dollars on securing our country and our borders.
The Secret Service could use it after hearing them today.
Training the FBI and the Secret Service.
Oh, well put. I mean, there's so many higher priorities. And look, we all want a clean planet. But, we still get 83% of our energy from old-fashioned oil, gas, and coal. And the idea that we're going to transition to using, switchgrass and windmills to power our economy is so absurd. But I just have to say I'm so disappointed with Janet Yellen for expressing support for one of the most absurd policies I can ever recall. And this is more than they want to spend $25 trillion of U.S. dollars on this. That's larger than practically our entire GDP, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, it's insane. Wow. It's insane. Judge Weinberg.
Steve, let me ask you this question. This conference they're doing, this international conference, they want to raise taxes worldwide and have a global agreement. Would you please explain how that's going to work out for the economy and for quality of life?
Yeah, I mean, look, here we have a problem of a global shortage of growth in the world, and instead of talking about how we can get more growth, they're talking about raising tax rates. They're talking about social justice, and these are the countries that are supposed to be leading the way to prosperity, and all they're talking about is higher tax rates. Yeah, do they want to make the whole world look like Venezuela, for goodness sakes?
Well, and by the way,
some
they're
rioting
protesting.
going on right now.
Yeah,
right?
Major right now because of the fraud election, if you will, over there that they're saying.
Are you allowed to say fraud?
Yeah, when it deals with Venezuela.
Only with Venezuela.
When it deals with Venezuela, you can. Absolutely.
The only place they have corruption elections, right?
Yeah, well, I'm from Chicago. We know a lot about corruption. But I think Caracas, Venezuela does it better than us. By the way, did you see that piece in the New York Times? They were analyzing what happened in Venezuela, and they said, socialism was working so great in Venezuela until these greedy capitalists came along, and brutal capitalism destroyed Venezuela. I'm like, that's capitalism? They haven't had capitalism in 20 years in Venezuela. So, by the way, if you followed what's happening in Argentina, if there's one country that's getting it right in the world, it's Argentina. They've moved toward an aggressive capitalist system, and boy, is that ever working.
Yeah, what a mess. By the way, what's going to happen with interest rates, Steve? What are you hearing?
Well, John is the expert on that, but I'm going to predict no interest rate cut this month, but I think next month we are going to see an interest rate cut.
Just in time for the election.
Yeah, right. Isn't that funny how that works out, isn't it? This is not supposed to be a political body, the Federal Reserve Board, but we know Jerome Powell and Donald Trump don't get along too well, and this may be the way of Jerome Powell sticking it to Trump by cutting interest rates. And look, the inflation has come down, and I know my good friend John Catsimatidis is in favor of a rate cut, and I think you could make a plausible case for it. But doing it right before an election, John, I think is just being political.
Well, how many presidential elections? I saw it on Fox today. They had it on a chart. That in the last 4 or 5 presidential elections, they lowered them like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, they do. Because this is a political body, and I love this idea. They don't take politics into account. Of course they do. Of course they do. They're not immune to politics. And Jerome Powell wants to be Fed chairman for another 4 years. So guess what he's going to do? He's going to lower those interest rates for the Democrats, and they will, maybe reappoint him. And so, now look. I am glad to see the inflation rate coming down. And how many times, John, did they raise the rates? Like 11 times or something like that?
Too many.
Too many. You say that. Too many. That's a good answer. Well, when Trump left office, Rita, the interest rates, for a mortgage were 3%, and now they're 7%. And it's people, young kids, like my kids are in their 20s and 30s, they can't afford to buy a house, Rita.
Yeah, it's unrealistic. Well, Steve Moore, thank you so much. What a mess all over the place. Thank you.
I'm just proud to be part of your lineup with Karl Rove, and who else have you got coming up?
We have Gray Jared coming up right now, in fact.
God.
Yeah, we don't fool around. This is top notch.
I think I've got a great lineup on More Money, and I do, but I think you guys trump me this time.
Well, you know what? We continue to keep that high standard here. Thank you very much, Steve. We appreciate it.
Have a great week, guys.